You can consider this part two in my politics as worldviews, and I want to remind you why I think that way. And that is because what's happening, I think, in a lot of the ways we talk about politics is we focus in on certain ideas or certain policies, and we strip it out of their worldview or intellectual context. So, for example, a conservative will look at an issue like a welfare program or a tax increase, and then just assume that that means that liberals or Democrats are involved or interested in assuming power and stripping the economy. Or a liberal can look at a tax break and go, oh, if you look at this tax break, you can see that all the conservatives are trying to do is protect wealth. But really, these policies that we're debating are part of a larger complex of ideas, right? So that a single policy plays into a view of the world and how the economy works. So you always want to take policies and drop them back into their worldviews. And once you do that, you can see, oh, here's why they think a tax break will lead to more incentive, more production, more jobs increase. Or here's how someone Democratic or liberal side can look and say that a tax increase with welfare will actually stimulate people, improve living standards, get more people in the workforce. It's part of larger theories. In light of that, then, I want to add one other thing to my discussion of politics as worldviews, and that is economic theory. There's lots of ways to understand economic theory and the difference between liberal and conservative. And I'm not trying to come up with a one uniform way of doing all that. But consider this, that the worldview of, on the liberal side or the left side, is that the economy is there largely to provide good-paying jobs. So that the focus of liberal economic policies is for labor, pro-labor, making sure that people working in a McDonald's have a living wage. And in order to do that, they expect government subsidies, tax from taxation, and they also expect that consumer prices will go up in order for companies to afford to pay the packages, whether it's the healthcare packages or the just the income, right? Just the wages, wage packages. On the other side, the conservative side, economies run from in their thinking best by low consumer prices, so that lots of consumers, 400 million in the country, well, I mean, that's total people, 250 million, whatever it is, people in the country with buying power, that they will all spend very little amounts of money buying things. I mean, profit, you're going to pay, most of the product you're going to pay for is overhead. There's a little profit on each time you buy a hamburger or a pair of shoes, and that little bit of profit, if you add it up over tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people, leads to enough money for companies to expand and grow jobs and these kind of things. So for the conservative side of things, the best economy is run best when you have low consumer prices, which then allow large numbers of consumers, right, to capitalize business, and businesses grow and make more jobs. Now, in order to get that, which is the resource for growing an economy, that is consumer purchases, you need low labor rates. So in order for that money in order for the companies to keep prices down. On the other side, if you want jobs to be the engine by which you give people a good standard of living, then you need consumer prices quite high, or you need tax rates high, so that governments can afford to pay, or businesses can afford to pay, the kind of wages that a liberal would like to see. Now, these two models are very different then. So you're going to pass policies that are going to cut taxes, because if a business is paying less taxes on the conservative side, then they don't have to charge as high price for their consumer goods, and consumers can buy those goods and get capital flowing into businesses which do hiring. On the other side, the idea is if consumer prices are low and there's no tax revenue to help out, then what ends up happening is businesses can't afford to pay their laborers, and workers get paid very, very little and not enough to survive. So it's hard to get these two together because one side is always going to complain about what the other side is doing. If you raise minimum wages for a conservative, then consumer prices are going to go up and people can't pay for things. Now, there's failures on both sides. So for a liberal on that side, since the government's paying for all of these things, at some point the government's going to run out of money, or the tax base is going to dry up, or the prices are going to increase so much that businesses, that consumers won't buy the goods, and then businesses can't pay labor what they want. On the other side, consumers are fickle, and you don't know what they're going to buy and not buy. And the little profit margins that you get, some goes to owner, that's only a small fraction, but the rest of it goes to the labor, and labor in most industries is not going to make a ton of money. So you're not going to get necessarily a great living wage by working in certain industries. But you can see both sides believe that each side believes that their view is going to make for more robust economy and more productivity and more jobs and more income. But at the same time, how you get it is very, very different. They entirely disagree with one another. So you can't just look at one and go, well, they're just greedy, or they're just, I don't know, tyrannical or despotic or whatever one calls the other. Point is, these theories about even tax breaks and such belong to larger worldviews that describe how economies work.